little bit, we end up meeting at Entrepreneur First. And you talk about, I want to do something in education. I'm like, yeah, cool. I also love education. Let's do it. And we were sitting around for 2 months as we played around with different ideas. We were speaking to students. We tried running classes. And eventually one day you call me and Tamir, I've got it. We're going to teach math through coding. Talk to me, why? Where did that come from? Why math? Why coding?
Yeah. So remember before we met, I was doing SAT online, and there were 330 people that joined every single day for an hour each. And dude, it was amazing because these kids were literally moving their birthday parties in order to make sure that they were there. So they were having the time of their life. Some parents messaged me like their kids want their parents to adopt me. They were sending me chocolate. These kids are really enjoying themselves. 2 things I learned from that. The first was kids in Asia are very, very smart. They were doing quadratic equations in their heads that I had to write down and do on paper. But what was different was that if you change the question just a little bit, and that doesn't look the same as the thousands of practice questions they've done, they've struggled. Or the flip side is, if you ask a question in a way where if you think a little bit, there's this faster way to get it, versus there's a long, arduous mathematical way to get it, students automatically do the long, arduous mathematical way because they're so used to that. They don't try to go for the fast shortcut. And the SAT is all about that. If you look at an SAT, I'm not making this up, if you look at the SAT math paper right now, it is easy. And I know you may be reacting to this, but really just look it up. Look at the first 20 questions. You will see it's not difficult. They just trick you. That's all it is. And students are falling for these tricks again and again. So I was like, okay, well, kids are smart. We just need to work on the logical reasoning aspect, but logical reasoning laterally, to be able to think of different approaches to approach something, to be able to think before you go and understand that concept fundamentally. So that was the first thing. That's where I think doing it via code is important, because when you write code to answer something, there's no right method. There are so many ways of doing something via code, and it forces you to really understand a concept at a fundamental level. So that's what addressed that. The second thing was the kids in these classes were having tremendous amounts of fun. Parents told me that there are 13 and 14-year-old people who are now students at Strive because they're older. They were just sitting in front of the laptop, having no idea what I was teaching because it's high school SAT, but they were enjoying themselves. And I realized if we can make the process of learning joyful, students will engage more, they'll ask more, they'll show up to class early, they'll stay later, they'll pay more attention. So all of the things that parents want their kids to do, which is study more, ask more questions, learn on their own outside, all of these are happening just because the sessions are fun. So the second impact of coding is that it actually makes learning fun. It addresses the question, why am I learning quadratic equations, for example? You teach a 15-year-old quadratic equations, they'll say, I'm learning it for the test. But if you have the 15-year-old make a game where a tank shoots a bullet and the bullet follows a projectile motion, which is actually a quadratic equation, a motion that's defined by a quadratic equation, then you ask the student, why did you learn that? They'll say, oh yeah, I remember learning that to build my tank game. And all of a sudden, the emotional relationship between the concept and the student is a positive emotional relationship. And that makes the world of a difference.
I think it comes back to what we were speaking about earlier in regards to just emotions. And I think it comes down to 2 things. First principle is understanding. You need to actually understand something, not word memorize it. And 2, you need to enjoy it. You need to actually have joy or be energized from the process of working through this. And then you unlock so much just by doing those 2 things.